And this movie is a movie that's obviously me just not giving a fuck anymore about my career. So I'm like, I'm just going to put in anything that makes me happy. And that big picture of the Dachshund, like, really made me happy. The movie is littered with Smodcast references. If you know our work, if you don't, it doesn't even just flies by. It doesn't even hurt you or anything. But in every episode of Smodcast, sooner or later, I'm like, Shaggy, shut up, because she's always barking while we record. So we put her front and center in the bedroom scene. It makes us and the family like smile.
Yeah.
But that's what the whole movie was, insanely masturbatory. It was just me going like, what do I like? I'm going to do that. My whole career in the beginning was all about like, what do I want to see? Like, you know, there was a moment early on where there was no Clerks, right? I mean, I just watched other comedy movies and enjoyed them, but never related to the heroes. I always kind of felt like, as much as I love the dudes in Animal House, the Delta House, like, I would never kill a horse. They killed a horse. Like, so, you know, there's a disconnect somewhere. I was always waiting to see me and my friends, not us specifically, but, like, the shit that we found fun, or, like, people that sat around talked about movies, used movies as their primary language, or talked about relationships and overly predicated on their self-esteem when it came to sex and shit like that. Just the world that I knew, never really saw up on screen. So, you know, I'd sit there and lament, like, why don't they make movies about me and my friends? And not us specifically, but, like, how come I never see my friends up there? Where's us? And then one morning I realized, like, Kevin, nobody's going to ever fucking make a movie about you and your friends. Nobody gives a shit about you and your friends. The only one who cares about you and your friends is you. So if you want to make a movie about you and your friends, you got to be the guy to do it. You'll never see it otherwise. And I did that, and it changed my life. And it put me into a place where I never really had to think about doing that again, but it just stripped mine my personal life to make everything early. That's why the early stuff resonates with people so much. Not cinema, as much as it's me pulling out like chunks of my heart and putting them between two platters. Like that's why I used to get real touchy when people attack those movies. I figured out, because attacking Clerks is attacking me. You know, you can attack a David Fincher movie, and David Fincher will be like, fuck you, I'm rich. and he's right. He's right. And he's smart enough to be like, art. Some people ain't going to like it, dude. But the first movies I made were not art. They were all like, this is me, it's cinematic blog. And so when somebody's like, ew, I don't like that movie, I'm like, you don't like me and my friends? And you get real personal. The beauty of Tusk is you don't have that personal level, because people are like, I don't like it. I was like, yeah, I don't blame you. It's fucking weird. But there was a moment very similar to Clerks with Tusk where I had that same thing. You could hear it on the podcast. It's crystallized, changed my life again. We sit there talking about this what became Tusk on episode 259 of this podcast, and I'm falling in love with the idea of like, oh, I want to see this movie. Why won't people make a movie about a guy who turns another guy into a walrus? It's so unfair. And I was sitting there going like, well, maybe you should do it. You used to be a filmmaker. And there's a point in the podcast where I had that same kind of like, why won't they do this? And I realized, like, Kevin, nobody's ever going to make a movie. You can sit here and plot it out for them, give them every fucking point, tell them it's theirs. Nobody's ever going to make a movie about a guy who turns a guy into a walrus. The only person who wants to see that is you. If you want to make it, fucking make it. And so I was like, all right, it worked on Clerks. Fuck it, I'll do it again. And so 20 years later, I get this weird kind of reboot where I'm like, I just don't really, I get it. The idea is to please myself. I'm a self-starter, and people are kind of interested in what I self-start at. But the moment I try to swim in the mainstream, the moment I'm like, what does everybody else like? Okay, let me try to adapt. I'm an untalented filmmaker trying to deal with themes talented filmmakers generally deal with. So really, I should kind of stay in my corner and just do the weird, cheap stuff. Like, this movie's under $3 million. As long as you cover your bets, foreign and domestic-wise, and we did. Like, Demarest is brilliant about XYZ particularly, pre-sold the movie abroad and stuff. So everyone's safe as kittens financially. Everything could blow up from here on in, and people would still make money. So once the business is ameliorated, all you can do is think about, all right, what do I want? What do I want to do? I'm fucking 43. I don't want to make movies anymore. I've been living in the world of podcasting, which is instant gratification. You got an idea, you sit down with somebody, you're there. There's none of this like, I need $20 million in Ben Affleck to express myself. I could just sit there and do it with a podcast. And I could do it with you, or I could do it by myself. Like, I've sat there on many podcast episodes of Fat Man on Batman without a guest and just read comics to them and shit. Talked about what they meant. So I was in a medium that was all about speed, you know, and also you do it and move on. Just like the people on radio who do it every morning. They do a show, they fucking move on. They don't sit there and go like, remember that time I did that one radio show? They're like, I do it every fucking day. We in the movie business fetishize everything we do. We spend years making these movies. And back up, we're making a movie, everybody. And it's horseshit. It's just as insta art as anything else can be. And I was interested in taking the process, shrinking it fucking down. So 6 months from the moment we were sitting there going, Walrus movie, I was on a set looking at Justin Long and going like, action, and he was going, you know, no, and it was amazing. And Yoga Hosers now has been the same thing. I got that process down to 4 months. 4 months from the moment I turned in draft one, it was April 20th. I said, here's what I want to do next, Yoga Hosers. Thank God the good folks at Starstream were like, oh my God, this is fucked up, let's do it. So Starstream jumped in, and less than 4 months, so April 20th, and we started shooting August 19th. I was on a set in front of my kid going, action. And I think it's like cutting down that thought time and the fetishization of the process allows you to go with the speed of a podcaster. And all this is about is telling stories, man. And if you can tell that story with a rubber suit as opposed to mocap, which is very popular but very expensive, do it. Like, they'll forgive. Like, you know, it's like, even if I couldn't wait for people to see the Walrus. Thank God they're reacting the way they do. Everyone like, Kurtzman's a genius. But I was waiting for anybody to be like, that don't look real, and be like, tell me what a real Chimera Walrus looks like. Show me. Like, we just showed you. So, and that was kind of a cool thing. 20 years into a career to be able to be like, look at this. You know, that's neat. You know, but essentially by this point in my career, they should know everything that I can do, and I'm pretty sure most people felt they did. So the nice thing was the medium that I fell in love with, it gave me such freedom to be able to just create stories at the drop of a hat. Provided a story thanks to a hoaxer over in England who woke up one morning and was just like, Walrus. And then like me across the sea, you know, 2 days later on the podcast going like, oh my God, like, could this be real? Is this true? Wouldn't this be like the Human Centipede but with a walrus? And then building from there. And that's coming from a guy who's never even seen the Human Centipede. But I heard the concept and I was like, they're doing this now? Holy shit, man, the gloves are off. You can do anything. You can make a movie where you sew people ass to mouth. The gloves are off. And it's like, everything's possible. I appreciate that, man. So for me, I was like, let's do it like that. That's what thrilled me about this process more than anything else. And I loved parks, like bringing parks, shine a light on parks. That was important to me and stuff. But the notion of, like, we put up that podcast, and there were a couple people, and I'll be talking about this till I'm blue in the face, but it's an important part of the tale. There were people who sat there listening to that podcast, me and Scott sitting there going, oh, it could be like this. And then, fucking, remember, like Iron Man, the third act, a bigger suit shows up? We can do fucking that. That'd be amazing. There are people that heard the show who would like to do what we do or do something similar or want to get their fucking miracle started and just don't know how to begin, because the fucking first step is impossible if you're not a self-starter. If you don't know where the fucking key goes, you can't start the fucking car. I'm lucky. After 20 years, I know exactly where the key goes. I drive a shitty car, but it doesn't matter. I know how to get it started. Some cats don't even know how to do that. So by listening to that podcast, we got these reactions on Twitter and Facebook that broke my heart. They were going, is that it? Is that allowed? You just said Iron Man, and it became Tusk. And I was like, yeah, motherfucker, it's allowed. Like, whatever fucking works, man. What do you think Quentin does? Quentin sits there and processes a lifetime full of entertainment that means something to him and then gives you his version of it, and that's why we fucking love him. So art begets art. Like, these cats didn't know. They thought there was some secret fucking alchemy, some riddle, only 20 people in the world can do this bullshit. We sat there and open source without thinking about it, let them know exactly how to do it, which is like two dudes sitting around talking about every other movie but this movie, and suddenly it becomes this movie. And I guarantee you sit there and watch Tusk, no one will ever be like, that's from Iron Man. Like, it won't occur to them, but it was part of the process. And people grooved on that. They were just like, is that how you do it? Is that allowed? It's like, fuck yes, it's allowed. So at that point I was like, all right, now I'm going to open source the whole fucking thing. Like, they can watch this from cradle to grave. Normally they get involved when it's like, we got a script and there's actors attached. But they were there for the absolute genesis. For the moment, there was no first. It was like a Donovan song. First there was no walrus, then there was a walrus, then there was, like, it in reverse. It didn't exist until about 20 minutes into that podcast. So they heard the literal birth of me going like, what if it could be a movie, and starting to build it. And they heard every aspect of it, and it wasn't arcane science, and it didn't take talent. It's the same shit they do with their friends all the time. They sit around, talk about their favorite parts of movies. All we did was assemble them into something that looked like a movie. And so once they saw us go forward, that was the important part. It's one thing for you to hear two people sit around going, wouldn't this be great, and then never fucking do anything about it. show them the next step, then show them the next step, then tell them how we got money, and then show them we didn't get money. Blumhouse, I was in Blumhouse for a month until he was like, Walrus movie, fuck off. And then I had to go find new money. So they got to chart the growth of it. And some people were like, well, you made Clerks, so of course you get money. Oh shit, a couple of years ago I stood on stage and was like, fuck everybody, goodbye, so long, thanks for all the fish. And that, I salted the earth and nobody wanted to work with me. So it took a couple of years and I didn't want to do anything, but suddenly when this happened, it was just weird enough. It had nothing to do with Kevin Smith's back. Nobody gave a fuck, man. It was like when Don Draper fucking bitched out cigarettes and shit. It didn't work. Like, it was for years. People were like, fuck you. So when I came back to the table with the Walrus thing, I approached brand new, fresh meat in the game. Like Demorath, they weren't around when I did all my shit. A24 didn't exist when Red State happened. If they had, I would have been at A24 because this is the distributor I dreamed about. They remind me of Miramax in the early 90s. They could do so much with so little. It's all about the story. So right away, when Demorath was like, we're going to finance this, they said to me, they're like, look, we would like this to go out traditionally, which is code word for like, you can't Red State this. And so I was like, I'm fine with that, it's your money, I understand completely. It's just an alternative, and I enjoy it. I've done it twice, and it really worked. If you want to do it traditionally, that's totally cool. The only thing I ask is there's one distributor who will understand this. Nobody else will get this movie. But there's a company that did this movie called The Bling Ring, and they took Spring Breakers out and fucking put it into double digits and shit like that. And that movie's a tough sell. It's a dubstep video, but they found a way to make people excited to go see that movie. And people who found it loved it. Some people who loved it, and other people were like, what the fuck did we see? But it got them off their asses and got them to go to the theaters. And when I first met with these A24 cats, they had this mantra, because they were like, look, man, we don't have VOD, we don't have video division and shit. All we got is theatrical. And all we're interested in doing is making theatrical a little bit sexy again. And that sang to the old man in me, because that's when I got into this business. That's all there was, man. It was your theatrical. It was the art house market. So I said, these cats, this is the only people who know how to make this movie, how to release it. And Sam Engelbart, who runs Demorath, was just like, oh, Daniel Katz is a friend of mine. Daniel Katz runs A24. And I was like, this is going to be so much easier. The job just got that much easier. Now I could just concentrate on making it. Last time I had to make it and then sell it myself. This time it's like, I'll just make it and I will give it to geniuses to sell. And these cats have been so fun. Like, you would think I was involved, but like, I've been like off making yoga hosers, and these cats will call me up and be like, we're thinking about branding some weed to Tusk. And I was like, are you shitting me? I can smoke my movie? You guys are amazing. And then, like, suddenly I'm on the phone with the New York Times. They're going like, oh, this is brilliant. And I was like, it ain't even me, dude. It's Graham Retzik over at A24. They, like everybody in a movie, brings the best they can do to the table. When you're on the crew, cast, or whatever, it's awesome to be in the distribution game with people who are like, we've seen your art, look what we can do. And they play it artfully, smartfully. They don't spend a lot of fucking money, and that fucking made me so happy, because it would break my heart if they spent millions to get this Walrus movie to people. It's too stupid for that. Like, it should either work or not, and it should really rise and fall on the internet. It's where it was born. Without the internet, it wouldn't fucking exist. It was fueled and greenlit by Twitter, based on a podcast that wouldn't have existed without the internet. I wouldn't have even heard that story from England, from Gumtree.uk, which is a website on the internet. Everything about it is the internet. So for me, this company, they don't do stuff where they're like, we're carpet bombing 2 weeks out. There are commercials everywhere. I think one commercial just ran last night because I saw my Twitter feed blow up, which proves TV does still work. But what these cats have done is real smart shit, man, where they're like, at the Toronto screening, we're going to have everybody put on a walrus mask. You cool with that? And I was like, fuck, yes. Like, that'll be surreal to take a picture of. Or them going like, okay, what we're going to do is create these little pictures that you can put out on Instagram and Facebook. And they're little works of art, man. And they got like one of the greatest comic book artists on the planet to do some fucking artwork for my dopey flick. Everything is smart. Like, I remember talking to him about Franco. There's an Oscar ad for Franco for Spring Breakers, for James Franco. And I was like, that was fucking brilliant, man. How much did that cost? They're like, nothing. I was like, well, you put it in the fucking Variety and shit. They're like, no, we didn't. We just created it and put it online. Everybody assumed it was in a magazine. I'm like, you guys are my fucking personal Jesus. Like, that's amazing. You're P.T. Barnum. Like, you found a way to fucking do the job and not spend a lot of money to do it. So they're artful salespeople, man, and that's what we need in a movie like this, is an artful sell. And thankfully, they found a way to communicate what that movie is without giving anything away. Like, you see the trailer and you're like, all right, I got a beat on it. But you get into the movie and it's like, it's just the tip of the Tusk. Like, it goes way deep. We go full Walrus. There is a quasi-Tusk, it's not a sequel, but it's kind of a spin-off. In the midst of making Tusk, there's a little sequence involving the two girls in the convenience store, which pass on the pad of paper. One of those kids is mine. The other kid belongs to Mr. Depp. So they've known each other for years and stuff. That's how Mr. Depp wound up in the movie, because we've known each other for a decade through our children and stuff. So once the kids were in the flick, and once I cut the movie and stuff, I obsessed over that scene because I loved it so much. I didn't know what it was, and I thought it was because I loved how anti-American they were. They were just like, we hate Americans, and this is my kid anyway, like always did. So I was like, oh, that's kind of current, like that looks right and stuff like that. So I kept watching the scene over and over, and I finally said to my wife, I was like, it sounds weird, but I think I can make a whole movie just based on those two girls and give a point. And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I keep watching the scene over and over. There's something about it. I don't know if it's the smocks they're wearing or something, but like they look good, or something about it really captured my imagination. And my wife is like, you're such a stupid ass. She's going, it's two people standing behind a fucking convenience store counter. Like, that's all you know in life. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. It's girl quirk. I get to go back to the beginning. So I sat there going, all right, let me try this. I talked to Vanessa first. It was Lily Rose's mom. And I was showing her at Lily Rose's scene, and she was like, oh my gosh, she's so amazing. I said, right? They're like kind of natural. I said, I'm actually going to write a movie based on the girls. Would you give a shit? And she was like, no, you're not. And I said, I'm a stoner. I do a lot of things. And so by the end, she was like, okay, go ahead. And it took me like a couple of weeks, man, but I dove into it. And so it's this weird spin-off from the movie. It doesn't involve the Walrus or Justin, but Justin's in it, playing a different character altogether. Everybody from Tusk returns, but the only ones that play the same characters are Johnny's Gila Point again, and the girls play the Colleens. But all the other actors, Haley, Genesis, Justin, return playing other characters. So it's all about the girls, but it's about what happened in Winnipeg 1 year after the events of Tusk. So basically, it's so fucking stupid. The girls became very locally famous. Like the local newspaper really hyped up the angle. So because the girls gave them the pad that led them, they're called, like there's an article over here that says Hero Girl Clerks Save Manitoba Manatee, which is what the press called it. And they spend a lot of the movie explaining that it was a walrus, not a manatee, shit like that. So then we go off on this adventure. The fucking movie is weirder than Tusk, I swear to you. I don't know how that's possible, but it is. We start as a very simple, like, fucking buddy movie. And then about halfway through, just like Tusk, we flip the script and it becomes something completely. It's another rubber movie. Robert Kurtzman, who made our Walrus, is making our antagonists in this movie. And it's way trippier than fucking this. So it's very psychotronic and stuff. And the girls are adorable. And this is the weirdest part of the movie. Like, it's tough to be intentionally weird because it's tough to weird out the age of the internet. You know, you can't really freak people out who have watched videos of men being fucked by horses. You know what I'm saying? That's like, holy shit. To be like, here's a rubber walrus. It's like, fuck you. I saw a dude fuck a horse once. So to find something that fucking surprises them, or to be weird, you gotta, like, there's a balance where you can't try to intentionally be weird. They'll smell that coming. So, you know, like with Tusk, there's the weird aspect of the dude in the suit, and that's at the heart of it, and that's what makes people go or not go, like what captures their imagination. What would that look like? But the sub-layer of weird is like in the middle of this movie that probably shouldn't exist, one of the world's greatest actors shows up and just fucking takes the whole third act away. And even that's weirder than the guy in the suit, because you're like, how the fuck did that happen? How did this movie get that guy? And then what's even weirder is like the old man, like, who's not, well, he does wear a suit at one point, but he's not encased in rubber the whole movie. His performance is so fucking dynamic that as much as you think about the Walrus, you equally think about an old man just saying some shit in the movie. Whole movie's about storytelling, and all I did was hang cameras on our actors and literally let them tell you a story. Sometimes we actually show you in pictures, but generally speaking, we do the thing you're not supposed to do in cinema. The thing I've been bitched at for 20 years, but it's my favorite thing to do in a movie, is you just hang a camera on an actor, and you let that person make pretend for as long as they can without fucking breaking. And you make the audience think that they're just thinking of this shit to say right off the top of their head. Not that there's some script over here and a bunch of cameras here and lights and a microphone and shit. That it's literally just fucking coming off the tip of their tongue and shit. That's the magic trick to me. I love people that move cameras around, but I'm not interested in that. I'm not talented enough to do that kind of shit. And I don't think that's where I best serve storytelling. Where I serve storytelling is my deep, deep affection for actors. That's what got me into this. I love watching people tell the lie that tells the truth, man. If they do it artfully enough, we all fucking learn something. So for me, this movie was all about I'm going to hang a camera on an actor and just let that actor talk at the camera. Because you're not supposed to do that in a movie. In a movie, you're supposed to fucking move and tell your picture with stories. But fuck that. In a movie this weird, I'm just going to have people sit there and literally go like, let me tell you a story. And just tell you that story as opposed to showing you with pictures and shit like that. And that actor is going to be so good at that, it's going to be like a campfire. Because you're just going to fall into that performance. You're not going to care that we're not showing you what that person's talking about. That performance can evoke everything that person's saying. So that to me is fun. Like, that's what I love about cinema. I know that's not the height of it. People like to see people moving around, shit explode. I like that too. I just can't do it. I like hanging a camera on an actor and letting them fucking like take the show away. Like, if I move a camera, that's you going, oh, he's clever. If I hang a camera on an actor, you go, holy shit, that motherfucker's great. And that's how you do this job. You top from the bottom. You don't stand, for me at least, you don't stand out front and be like, look at me, look at me. I did that once with Red State to sell the movie. And it was a great detriment to Michael Parks. The only regret I had about the entire Red State experiment, it was very successful, it was Parks. Parks got overlooked because I was out there going, look at me, buy a fucking ticket, because we were doing it without doing the traditional way. We didn't do this. Nobody bought a junket for me or anything like that. I had to get on the phone with every member of the press or go see him in person and shit. So in order to kind of like call attention to that release so we can make as much money by spending as little as possible, Parks' performance took a back seat. People forgot how amazing he was. So Tusk, part of Tusk comes from me wanting to correct that. I was always like, there's no one regret of Red State. That Tusk didn't walk away with more tin. He got an award in Stitches for Best Actor. I really thought he should have got more. And it ain't about me, because I didn't direct that performance. I just pointed the camera at it. He's just a fucking force of nature, like an acting Yoda. So I felt like this movie, if I make this weird Walrus movie, and that was part of the reason that fueled it, I was like, I would love to be on a set with Parks again, and you take the sex and the religion and the politics out of Red State, and all you're left with is his performance. Just like saying batshit crazy things and selling it and whatnot. Like, he literally just quotes Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, and you're like, oh my God, I gotta go read Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Like, he makes everything sound good. The dude makes choices. Acting's all about choices. And this dude makes choices no other actor I ever met makes, ever. And then there's one scene in the middle of the movie, probably the longest, overlong scene in the movie. As an editor, it makes me flinch. But I left it exactly as it is when Guy Lapointe meets Howard Howe, the one and only time he does the flashback, and they have that scene on the porch. And it's just two motherfuckers eating the scenery like it's candy around each other, like two Pac-Men, until they fucking meet in the center and just act at each other like wizards. It's crazy. Like, the scene is batshit. This guy's doing a weird accent you've never heard before in the movie. This guy's doing a completely different accent. None of it fucking makes sense, but you're like, fuck, they're committed. These two are acting like it's fucking Argo, not the Walrus movie. And that's the beauty of it, man. Everyone really gave that performance. So that scene in the center, that's a scene that landed us Johnny. You know, I told him, I was like, you get to act with Michael Parks. I was like, I want to shine a light on Michael Parks. He got overlooked on fucking Red State. This movie is my way to make up for that. And he just texted me back, I love Michael Parks. And right then I was like, oh my God, we're going to make a Johnny Depp movie. Originally, Gerard was supposed to play Ichabod, the girl's older drummer that hangs out with them. But he's touring right now, so he missed our window. But he'll be involved musically for sure. God, I mean, number one, like you said, because the kid, I know his work. Well, actually, she knows his work because me. I was first. Cause I love that hockey video that they cut to it. But he's like smart. Tusk was fed by a lot of the Smodcast, aside from the stories, but it's just like pulling together, like the score was done by Chris Drake, who was on an episode of Fat Man on Batman. He'd done the Dark Knight cartoon score and stuff. We had such a good time talking. When I was thinking about putting the movie together, I was like, this dude does amazing work. He's never done a feature. Let's get him. Gerard was a guest on Smodcast and stuff. So I went to him. I was like, I want to close the movie with a cover of Oh Wally Wally, The Water's Wide. And he was like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. Then there's lots of, like, Guy Lapointe comes from another episode, Yoga Hosers, which we didn't call him in the movie. That comes from another episode. Tusk comes from this. The Spider comes from an early episode. So we got to, like, kind of litter it with the shit that I love. And that was me being masturbatory. You know, me going like, look, I know after 20 years in this business, I cannot please everybody. I spent a good middle portion of my career. First portion, I didn't give a fuck. I just did what I wanted. Middle portion, I was sitting there going, okay, what does the market want? What does everybody doing? What's popular? All right, I got to find a way to adapt. And I'll never be able to swim in those waters, man. I'm either salt or fresh water. I can't do both. So the next part of my career, I just got to that stage where I was like, I don't give a fuck. I'm just going to put shit in that makes me smile. And so shit like that makes me smile. Putting Parks in there, man, doing stuff where I'm like, let me get Gerard away, because we did that one interview, and anybody who knows Smodcast, number one, it just plays wonderfully in the movie.
Yeah.
But if you ever heard the episode of the podcast, you're like, holy fuck, man, he got Gerard way in the movie and shit like that. So I don't know. I got to a place where I'm like, I guess if you make it fun for you, that's the best you could do. You can't make it great. You know, like we had a wrap party for Yoga Hosers, and people were like, oh my God, the crew like loved it. Like they had a great experience. We have very warm sets, very congenial warm sets. And I don't direct the movie as much as narrate it. So I'm kind of, I love the sound of my own voice. So I'm constantly, okay, folks, this is what we're doing today. Every fucking step of the day. So last night there were a lot of people going like, my God, what a fun set to be on and stuff. I said, look, I cannot make a great movie. I've been trying 20 years. I know I can run a great set, though. Comfortable enough where, like, you don't feel like fucking work. And then everyone brings a AAA game and shit. That's how we got to Tusk. That's how we're getting through Yoga Hosers. So, yeah, I mean, I guess at a certain point it helps to just kind of disconnect from who you thought you were and reboot. But it certainly fucking helps that it was the same mind snap moment of, like, well, if you really want to see this independent filmmaker, you will make this movie, you know, and so that brought me back. It was a clarion call, just the willingness, the wantingness to see that fucking stupid Walrus movie. And now I've seen it.